Kia ora. Thank you, everyone. So I'm Scott Babington. I'm an oncologist at Christchurch Public Health. So I just wanted to run through a few things today. There we go. So the first thing, I think I've skipped one slide, was I had a nice smoke-free slide, because I think smoke-free 2025 is just the best thing since sliced bread. What a wonderful goal, and really I think we should applaud the people that have developed it and brought it this far. So briefly what I wanted to do was run through the history of tobacco use. I know everyone knows this, but I just wanted to sort of point out a few things. I was just lucky enough to be at the World Lung Cancer Conference in Denver, Colorado this year, in fact a week and a half ago, and there was a lot about tobacco and stopping smoking at that conference, which I found very, very interesting considering it was in the US and not far from the big tobacco producing regions. So this message is getting out there, and it's getting around the Western world certainly in particular. But it really was 1881 when the first cigarette production machine really ramped up production to over 60 cigarettes an hour. And that was when it stopped being a person rolling a cigarette to actually mechanised production, and we've been able to increase production ever since. Then Philip Morris & Co. And why do I mention this? Philip Morris International is the biggest company outside the US, British American Tobacco within the US and then now in Asia. And their products, and particularly you'll see on the lower right-hand side of your screen, the first product placement in 1980 in a Superman movie. So that brings me on to advertising. Advertising is a very, very powerful medium. Now, it's social media nowadays, but there's actually a history and a story that we need to be cognizant of, because the tobacco companies have used this very, very well, and they're going to keep using it very, very well in ways that I don't understand, because I'm not a social media person. So it was in the 1950s that the first Marlboro adverts came out, but the Marlboro Man came around in 1963, and it was the single most successful advertising program in the 20th century. That one single, what a fantastic, whoever developed it, they really deserved a raise, because they were very, very effective. So this is how effective things can be. We have to be very cognizant of all the promotion, all the underlying work against what we're trying to promote here today that's going to go on, and it's only going to ramp up in the next few years. So bringing this now to New Zealand, it really was the World Wars that brought smoking, as we know. Cigarettes were handed out. They were more convenient in the frontline trenches than cigars and rolling your own. And so by the end of World War II, 75% of adult males and 25% of adult women were smokers. So peak tobacco consumption was in the 1950s, and thankfully since then it has reduced, particularly in the 1990s, as we all know, and I can show graphs to that effect. So then trying to look on the other side of things, the sort of reflection of how we've started to promote the anti-smoking sort of message. So in 1948 the Department of Health had its first poster against linking smoking and lung cancer. 1963, cigarette ads were banned from radio and television, huge effect. Then cinema and billboards were banned. Health warnings appeared on cigarette tobaccos in 1974. You mightn't think that that has much effect, but it does. And then 1984, the first start of the tobacco control program, hugely successful, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Sales were banned to under 16-year-olds in 1988. And Leanne mentioned the effect on international air travel. I don't know if you remember when we used to have non-smoking areas, one aisle in front of the smoking area. I can have several awful journeys on that, but we have actually managed to survive the whole way to the Americas and Asia without smoking. So we can do it, and this has particular relevance when we start talking about smoke-free CPDs and restaurant eating areas outside. And so then the smoke-free environments and those very, very important amendments around bars and all the propaganda that went out about how it would be the end of the bar industry. Clearly that hasn't happened. And so, sorry, that's actually too small for me to read. So actually from the 1980s to 1990, we had the most rapid rate of reduction of smoking consumption in the world. 1992, we actually had the lowest tobacco consumption in the OECD as the effect of all those measures. So New Zealand can do this. We can lead. We're very effective at it. Right, so the smoking rates, we've all seen this, and in the latest census, only 13.8% of adults smoke. So in some ways, that measure looks very, very good, and it's certainly up there with the OECD. However, the risk is that we're having trouble with the young taking up smoking, particularly Maori and Pacific Islanders, and that's really something we've got to address. The age at starting smoking is very, very important. The younger you start, the more difficult it is for you to stop, and the more likely that you're going to continue smoking. My wife looked at these figures and said, oh look, the lower rates in the older age group are just selection bias, and it may be so, because actually people probably are dying off, but it's not quite that simple. However, worldwide tobacco consumption is still increasing, and this is not acceptable. So the US and Philip Morris International have just moved their sales principally to Asia, and so you can see this reflected in the lower left-hand corner. The black areas, or the dark areas, are where the highest consumption is happening. So I just have to remember that all of our efforts, I think this is very, very important. We are leading the world, but we still have to show the rest of the world what they need to do. So why are we standing here now? Why didn't we have the seminar last century? We've known for over 100 years now the link between tobacco consumption and lung cancer. So this is a very early Lancet article. Very interestingly, it wasn't just in the medical literature. This is Reader's Digest for 1924. So they had an article linking the effect of smoking and lung cancer and other health benefits. And in fact, the Reader's Digest never carried any tobacco advertising after this article. So they really made a stand, and that was, I think, to be applauded. And so in 1956, there was a research article showing definite linking between lung cancer and smoking. So we have known for over 60 years this, and yet we're still having this seminar only now. So there has been some very, very powerful forces to prevent us doing what we needed to do. Now, I wasn't going to go through all the effects of smoking, because we know those, and I think we accept all of those. It affects every organ in the body. But I was at the World Lung Cancer Conference this year, and one of the first plenary sessions was an anti-smoking message. And one of the North American presenters stood up and said, the effect of stopping smoking in your oncology patients, these are patients with cancer already, is greater than many of the compounds that we will talk about in this conference. Now, most of the audience were medical oncologists. They couldn't have given any care at all. So we actually had a simple thing: stop your patient, this is patients now diagnosed, smoking, and they will have a better outcome. So, in fact, it's so bad that actually if I cure someone of smoking-related cancer, they are more likely to die of something else smoking-related. The Marlborough men, the people that we talked about before, this is at least 4. In fact, it's turned out that it's 5 of the 9 Marlborough men have died of smoking-related diseases. There's a wonderful, wonderful Lancet picture of one of the Marlborough men with all the effects of lung cancer in him, of smoking-related diseases in him. He died of lung cancer. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find it despite my best effort. So how do we get the message out about quitting smoking? The ABC, really important. I do that with all of my patients that smoke, but actually I, as an oncologist, am relatively few in number. Most of my colleagues don't. So it is still important, because if we're going to cure them of cancer to live long enough to die of other smoking-related health effects, we need to get this message out there. There are brilliant resources out there. It is, as Leanne describes, a marathon to stop smoking, but people have to make up their mind to stop smoking. That is the key, as Leanne has so well expressed. Secondhand smoke, we know all about this. This is really, really important, and this is what Smokefree CBDs are here about. Really, I look to the future when my children might actually grow up in an environment not having any induction to go into smoking. Is it disputable that smoke-free environments are important? No, it's not. This is the evidence for it. What is the council doing about it? Smoke-free playgrounds are fantastic. But this is the main entrance to Christchurch Women's Hospital, and this is Kay sweeping up the tobacco butts and I can tell you my bike is just parked around the corner there. There are tobacco butts every afternoon, if not people's actively smoking there. So we've got work to do. So how could we go towards a smoke-free CBD? I think giving some areas to smokers is a good idea, but like the Christchurch Airport, we contacted the Christchurch Airport and said, that was great, did you go smoke-free to align yourself with the Smoke-Free 2025? They said no, it was just a commercial decision to stop destruction of their property. So there are commercial interests that can drive this sort of thing as well. But this is the Harvard campuses, and you can see here showing the buildings are smoke-free, but also the environment around it, and that's how I think we need to go. Leanne talked about the smoke-free social housing. I think that was the single biggest initiative that the council could have had. I really applaud them about that, but we've got some other work to do around the smoke-free CBD. Other ways of fighting back for smoking message. This is the most brilliant YouTube video if you want to watch that, 10 minutes, John Oliver on anti-smoking. On the left is Jeff the Diseased Lung. He's offered it to the tobacco industry to promote their message. Lastly, I've got to finish up. Do smoking programs work? This is a systematic review done in the US. Yes, they do. Very, very good evidence for that. And so this is some of the evidence. It's all available at the website here. And then just lastly, the TPPA, this is a real risk to us. So the British American Tobacco have the ability to sue us, and so we have the ability to lose control of an anti-smoking program. This is a real risk to us, and so we have to be very careful in what we do, because boy, there's lots of lawyers out in tobacco land. Now on the right, we now know that this was wrong. This was to give children free air and sunlight. This is wrong, so is smoking tobacco. We know that, we have to stop it. Thank you for your attention.